This video is being released the same week James Gunn's highly anticipated new Superman film opens in theaters. I haven't seen it yet, obviously, and beyond the hints and teases in the marketing, I really have no idea what to expect. But Gunn has previously said that one of his major influences for the movie is All-Star Superman. And that, along with Gunn's excellent track record as a writer and director, is reason enough to be optimistic about the movie. All-Star Superman, in case you've forgotten, is the 12-issue series written by Grant Morrison with pencils by Frank Quitely and inks by Jamie Grant, the first issue of which was released in November 2005. It was hailed as a masterpiece by fans and critics from the very beginning, and in the nearly 20 years since its original publication, no other work has matched its ability to capture the essence of what makes Superman so enduring. If you've never read All-Star Superman, consider this a spoiler warning because I am going to talk about a lot of what happens in it. Also, if you've never read All-Star Superman, go read All-Star Superman. Don't experience it for the first time secondhand through me. Do yourself a favor. Then you can come back and watch me shamelessly gush over how awesome it is, okay? Okay. The premise of All-Star Superman, as all of us who have read it know, seems simple enough. After being exposed to a massive overdose of solar radiation while rescuing a team of astronauts from a mission to the sun, which was sabotaged by Lex Luthor, Superman learns that he is dying. With the end of his remarkable life rapidly approaching, he rushes to tie up loose ends, solve as many problems, and help as many people as he can, and prepare the world to go on without him. With that as a starting point, you might think the story that follows would be somber, elegiac, backwards looking, but you'd be just hugely, incredibly wrong. There are definitely moments of sadness and poignancy, especially toward the end as the shadows really begin to fall. But for the most part, All-Star Superman is not a misty-eyed eulogy for Superman, but a colorful, weird, energetic, and endlessly imaginative celebration of Superman, his adventures, and his often bizarre and bonkers world. It is a work of profound humanity and fearless optimism, and it is also absolutely ridiculous in the best possible way. To read it is to experience an abbreviated, highly concentrated, slightly unhinged, and sometimes not so slightly unhinged representation of the first 30 or so years of Superman comic books. The vibe of All-Star Superman is Silver Age, with both the chaos and the pathos turned way up. The first issue is one of the most densely packed and tightly executed introductions I've ever read, beginning with an audaciously stripped-down retelling of Superman's origin, reducing that too often told story to its bare essentials, presented on one page in 4 panels. Doomed planet, desperate scientists, last hope, kindly couple. There you have it. Who is Superman? Where did he come from? If you didn't know, now you know. In the following pages, as Morrison and Quitely race breathlessly from beat to beat, lingering just long enough for everything to register before moving on to what's next, we meet billionaire scientist Leo Quintum and his team of genetically engineered assistants. We're reintroduced to Lex Luthor, who is attempting to destroy Quintum's sun mission via a remote-controlled human bomb he somehow snuck aboard Quintum's spacecraft. As is often the case throughout the series, we're spared the boring details. We meet Lois Lane and the rest of the gang at the Daily Planet, and then we get a tour of Quintum's lab, located on the dark side of the moon, where Superman learns that he's absorbed an overdose of solar radiation, and he's going to die. The last piece of business we see Superman take care of in the first issue, and the first item on his list of things to do before he dies, is to walk Lois Lane back to her doorstep as Clark Kent and reveal to her that he is Superman. That's one hell of a beginning. If you're not on the hook for the rest of the series after that, I don't really know what to tell you. Though, as issue 2 begins, we see that one person who isn't very impressed is Lois. She's not too sure about this Clark Kent is Superman thing. It's not that Lois has never suspected that Clark Kent was Superman. Quite the opposite. She's suspected that might be the case many times, But every time she was absolutely sure she'd finally proven that Clark and Supes were the same person, Superman was somehow able to convince her that she was wrong. Now, after years of gaslighting, which all fans of Silver Age Superman comics will know was totally a thing, Superman has told Lois the truth, and she doesn't believe him. She keeps waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the gag to be revealed. She treats Superman sharing with her his most important secret as though she's being set up for a prank. In fact, she never fully accepts that Superman and Clark are the same person, despite Superman's best efforts. So, after spending most of issue number 2 conducting her on a tour of his Fortress of Solitude, where we see Morrison and Quitely's clever twists and additions to some more of Superman's classic Silver Age mythology, my personal favorite is his replacement for the gigantic yellow key. It's an ordinary-looking key that he keeps under the welcome mat, but it's made of super dense dwarf star material and weighs hundreds of thousands of tons, so only Superman can lift it. Superman gives Lois her birthday present. It's her birthday, by the way. A serum he's formulated that will give her all of his superpowers for one day. As issue 3 begins, Superman and Lois, aka Superwoman, arrive back in Metropolis just in time to save the day from a rampaging Krull, son of Tyranko, Dinosaur of the Sub-Tyrannosauri, the modern-day descendants of dinosaurs who live in the hollow center of the Earth. Naturally. Only it turns out they don't actually need to save the day, because right after Superman and Lois get there, these two time-traveling dumb jocks, Samson and Atlas, arrive to handle Krull. They both zero in on Lois, identifying her as that rarest of finds, an attractive single woman with superpowers. Samson and Atlas begin competing with Superman for Lois's attentions, a competition which takes them all down to subterranean dinosaur land, and concludes with Superman saving Lois from the clutches of the Ultra Sphinx by answering the riddle, what happens when the unstoppable force meets the immovable object? Superman's answer? They surrender. The Ultra Sphinx is like, yeah, okay, I'll accept that, and lets Lois go. Superman shuts up Samson and Atlas by beating them both in arm wrestling matches at the same time, breaking their arms in the process, though apparently they both then get invited to Lois's birthday party, so I guess there are no hard feelings. From an adventure shared with Lois in issue 3, we go to a titanic battle against Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, in issue 4. I love the All-Star Superman version of Jimmy Olsen. He's perhaps my favorite take ever on the character. All-Star Jimmy is leading a life that is simultaneously blessed beyond belief and darkly cursed. Literally, we learn. In the first scene of the issue, Jimmy tells his girlfriend, Lois's sister Lois Lane, that he's been cursed with bad luck until the next full moon. And that's why he was just named the worst-dressed man in Metropolis for the second year in a row. No other reason. Jimmy's job at the Daily Planet involves writing a regular feature for the Sunday edition of the paper, where he shares his experiences working various exciting jobs for one day. He's chosen, probably not coincidentally, the newly minted best-dressed man in Metropolis, Leo Quintum, to help him with his next piece. While Quintum is away visiting the home planet of gas-based aliens, the Electrokind, Jimmy will take his place as the director of his moon-based scientific think tank. What could go wrong? I mean, by the end of the issue, Superman has been exposed to a newly discovered form of black kryptonite which turns him evil, and Jimmy transforms himself into a doomsday in order to stop Superman from destroying Metropolis, but eventually Superman comes back to his senses. Jimmy successfully de-doomsdays himself thanks to a hypnotic trigger linked to the timer of his trusty Superman signal watch, and he even manages to impress Lucy by scoring tickets to the hit Broadway show Frankenstein on Ice and temporarily defacing the surface of the moon with a romantic message for Lucy, so it all works out. The series continues on in this same fashion, each issue presenting a mostly self-contained story while also featuring character arcs and narrative threads that run through multiple issues to tie the series together and give it a sense of unity despite its episodic structure. This storytelling technique is also known as how every series should be written. In issue 5, Lex Luthor, who peacefully surrendered to authorities at the end of issue 1, is found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to death. Clark Kent visits him for a prison interview, but they are forced to flee when Parasite, who is also a prisoner, begins to absorb Superman's energy and goes on a rampage. Lex helps Clark escape, but decides to remain in prison and face his death sentence, apparently satisfied to die knowing he has also given Superman a death sentence with the solar radiation overdose. Issue 6 is a flashback to Clark's younger days in Smallville just before he relocates to Metropolis. It's a sweet, sad, and deliriously goofy tale that culminates in the death of Pa Kent and features a visitation of a team of Superman descendants from the far future, including this guy, who foreshadows that our Superman's ultimate fate will be something other than death. Issues 7 and 8 focus on, respectively, a Bizarro invasion of Earth and Superman's efforts to escape the cube-shaped Bizarro world on which he's been trapped. Issue 9 sees Superman return to Earth after 2 months on Bizarro World to find the world being protected by 2 newly arrived Kryptonians, Bar-El and Lilo, famous astronauts from Krypton, who have taken over Superman's Fortress of Solitude and decided to remake Earth into a new Krypton once all these pesky humans are out of the way. Through all this increasingly outlandish wackiness, there's a bit in issue 9 where Bar-El and Lilo crack the moon in half and staple it back together using bridges they take from Earth. Morrison and Quitely never neglect the human element. Issue 6 has the heartbreaking death of Pa Kent. Issue 7, a tender moment between Lois and Superman as he's about to fly off to save Earth from the Bizarro world. Issue 8, the tragic character of Bizarro, a mutant Bizarro who finds himself the only thoughtful, poetic soul on his world. And issue 9, Bar-El and Lilo are struck with deadly kryptonite poisoning, and Superman forgives their brutality and does his best to help them. The swirl of silliness, humor, and tragedy that is All-Star Superman reaches its creative high point in issue 10. For my money, one of the best single issues of a Superman comic ever. With his time running out, Superman hurries around the world and beyond to accomplish as much as he possibly can before the end. We follow him through his day, jumping from event to event, out of chronological order, as he flies a bus full of terminally ill children to see the pyramids of Egypt, shrinks Leo Quintum to allow him to visit the bottle city of Kandor and propose a solution to their predicament, saves Metropolis from yet another rampaging supervillain, finally admits to Lois Lane that he is dying, creates a duplicate Earth in an infant universe to observe how his Earth might get along without him, transcribes his own genetic code and gives it to Leo Quintum for his research, takes the bottle city of Kandor to Mars and releases it from the bottle so its tiny citizens can build a new civilization, dispatches some of the microscopic Kandorian scientists to cure the terminally ill children from the beginning of the issue, composes his last will and testament, and, as Clark Kent, writes the story of his own death. It's quite an issue, and obviously that summary doesn't come close to doing it justice. The most impactful moment is the one I didn't mention. A teenage girl named Reagan is standing on the ledge of a roof preparing to jump, convinced that life is no longer worth living. Superman arrives, places a hand on her shoulder, reassures her that things aren't as bad as they seem, and that she is stronger than she thinks she is. And he gives her a hug. It's probably the most celebrated page from any Superman comic book published in this century, hell, maybe ever. But it's even more powerful in context. Throughout the rest of the issue, Superman is involved in events of global, even cosmic importance. He's fighting killer robots. He's creating alternate Earths. He's resettling an entire alien city. And in the midst of all that, he stops and makes time to save a single life. And how does he save that life? By catching her after she jumps? No. By catching her before she jumps and telling her that she has value and that she deserves to be in the world. By showing her that he cares. That's what makes Superman, Superman. Not the costume, not the fantastic adventures, not the powers, the fact that he uses his powers to try and save anyone in trouble, even someone who believes they aren't worth it. No matter how small you think you are, Superman can see you, and he wants to help. Issue 11 opens with the long-awaited execution of Lex Luthor. It doesn't take. It turns out that sneaky evil genius secretly mixed up his own version of a 24-hour super serum, and he breaks himself out of prison and sets about causing mayhem in Metropolis, expecting that Superman will soon be dead. Superman, meanwhile, flies off with his Fortress of Solitude robots to face and defeat Solaris, the tyrant sun, who Lex has called upon for an assist in case Superman puts up too much of a fight in his waning hours. Superman defeats Solaris, but then appears to die himself as the issue ends. As the final issue of the series begins, Superman is experiencing the Kryptonian afterlife with his father. But instead of accepting his fate, he chooses to fight his way back to consciousness to make one final stand against Lex. He zaps Lex with a gravity gun, presumably grabbed from the armory we glimpsed earlier in the series during Lois's tour of the fortress, and that has the effect of warping time around Lex, running down the clock of his 24 hours of superpowers much faster, and also causing Lex to become overwhelmed by his newfound super senses. He experiences the world the way Superman does, sees what Superman sees, and has probably his first moment of genuine human insight, tearfully realizing that we're all in this together, and we're all we've got. That one moment of clarity doesn't instantly reform Luthor, though. This series, as goofy as it is far too smart for that. Feeling his power fade away, Lex tries to give himself another dose of super serum, but Superman takes it away. When Lex protests that if Superman had not stood in his way, he could have saved the world, Superman punches him out and says, "You could have saved the world years ago if it mattered to you." Goddamn. With Lex defeated, there's only one act of heroism left to perform, and it's a big one. It seems Solaris, the tyrant sun, poisoned the real sun, and only Superman, his own cells now converting to pure energy in the final stage of his solar radiation poisoning, can save it. He tells Lois Lane that he loves her and flies off to save the world for the last time. We pick up the action a year later for a brief epilogue. Jimmy Olsen, traveling via jetpack, naturally, arrives to find Lois Lane sitting alone in a park. There's a memorial service for Superman, but Lois is sitting it out because she knows the truth. Superman isn't really dead. He's up there, fixing the sun. When he's finished, he'll be back. And when that time comes, he'll know where to find her. We get a page showing us that Lois is correct. Superman, now seemingly existing as pure solar energy, is in the heart of the sun, operating some great machine working to keep the sun alive. Meanwhile, on the moon, Leo Quintum is putting that genetic code he received from Superman to good use, and has his own big plans for how to deal with a world without a Superman. One of the many qualities that make All-Star Superman such a joy to read, no matter how many times I do read it, is how jam-packed it is. There are enough ideas in these 12 issues to fuel several years of comic stories told at a more typical, modern pace. Lex Luthor secretly hijacking a space mission to the sun to trick Superman into fatally overdosing on solar radiation in the hands of almost any other writer. That's at least a full issue all by itself. Here, the rescuing the space mission bit is over about halfway through. And issue 3, the Lois Lane Superwoman story, that's probably 3 months worth of story right there. Lois gets superpowers, joins Superman in fighting an intelligent dinosaur who has invaded Metropolis from beneath the earth. Then Samson and Atlas, who in addition to being superpowered dudes themselves are also time travelers, show up and are hot for Lois. Then everyone goes down to the underground realm of the intelligent dinosaurs. Then an Ultra Sphinx shows up. Then after the Ultra Sphinx is defeated, Superman arm wrestles Samson and Atlas, then takes Lois on a romantic flight to the moon before returning her home and tucking her into bed as her superpowers wear off. I mean, come on, no way, that's just one issue. But it is one issue. And it works for the same reason similarly packed and fast-paced issues worked back during the Silver Age. It's overflowing with energy and imagination, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Every issue of All-Star Superman is packed with characters and advanced technology and exotic locations, just lore on top of lore on top of lore, but the series indulges in only the most necessary exposition. Stories are joined in media res with seemingly long-running and complicated events already well underway, requiring us in the audience to race to catch up and then to keep up, which makes for an exhilarating read. The perspective of the entire series has a fly-on-the-wall quality, as though we've been dropped into this world with little to no explanation and we're just watching what happens. In other words, Morrison and Quietly don't waste any more of our time explaining their world than they absolutely have to, because they're far more interested in playing with it and enjoying it. They've obviously put a ton of thought into every issue, every page of this, but their number one priority is in telling their story, not in making sure we know what everything is and where it came from. The plots of some of these issues are thin, and given to sudden leaps forward, there are a few abrupt jumps to conclusions and a few beats that rely on a character, usually Superman, just happening to know something important. That's in part a consequence of how dense these issues are, and it would be a problem for another series, a lesser series. But it's not really a problem for me here, because it's obvious from the first pages of issue 1 that, for Morrison and Quietly, the plots aren't really the point. The plots are just lines on which to hang gorgeous visuals, which never fail to impress, and big emotional beats, which always land exactly the way they're meant to. The tone of the series is wide-ranging, anything goes, and extremely irreverent. Morrison's love of the outrageous combines well with their knack for deadpan humor, giving us moments like this one from issue 3, where Samson flings Krull into outer space, and Superman, using his telescopic vision, casually observes that Krull's lungs have just burst before flying off to save the poor bastard. Speaking of Morrison's sense of humor, and specifically their gift for cheeky cleverness, what other writer would even think to do what they do with the series title, let alone have the audacity to actually do it? If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. It didn't dawn on me until years later either. Just think about what the series is called, and think about the state of Superman at the end of it, where he is and what he is. You got it? Isn't that fucking brilliant? Yet, despite the irreverence and the colorful craziness that fills the series, All-Star Superman always remains true to the core of its main character and his world. This is a Superman story written and drawn by people who believe in Superman, and who take him at face value, as a hero, and as someone we can trust and look up to. Morrison and Quietly also never neglect to find room in the midst of their breathless free-for-all for moments of quiet, stillness, and grace, like Superman's scene with Reagan on the ledge, or Superman and Lois's kiss on the moon, or this panel depicting the moment after Superman and his robots have flown off to face Solaris the Tyrant Sun, showing a solitary robot who has stayed behind to look after the Fortress of Solitude once Superman is gone. Another thing I love about the series, it's all about Superman. That seems obvious at first, but think about it. There's no Batman, though he does get a brief, appreciative mention. There's no Justice League. Superman's fellow heroes do definitely exist in this world, but aside from brief appearances by the Bizarro versions of Green Lantern and the Flash, they aren't seen on the page. This one is all about Superman and his very large, very strange corner of the DC universe. Our journey through that corner in these 12 issues is not a nostalgia tour. It's not an excuse to retell or reimagine classic stories. The work has a strong Silver Age vibe, and there are one or two appearances by characters from Silver Age Superman comics or references to events from the same. But most of this stuff was created by Morrison and Quietly for this series, or created by Morrison for one of their earlier works and re-envisioned here. It's a testament to the talents of Morrison and Quietly that characters like Leo Quintum, Krull, Tyranko the Dinosaur, the Ultra Sphinx, Bizarro, Bar-El and Lilo, and objects like the Cosmic Anvil feel like they're genuine artifacts of the Silver Age, even though they're not. They're all original to this series. Grant Morrison's writing has never been better, but it's also rarely been brought to life by as ideal a partner as Frank Quietly. Like the Superman drawn by Tim Sale in Superman for All Seasons, Quietly's Superman is a great big hulk of a guy, but also like Sale's interpretation, Quietly's Superman is a gentle giant. projecting kindness and friendly intentions. He's the most powerful being on Earth, but he's only a threat to those who threaten to hurt others. Quitely's art has a squiggly quality. Even his straight lines aren't clean and perfect. It's an intentional messiness that blends perfectly with Morrison's script. Quitely's work is bold and brash enough to match Morrison's story, but it's also capable of wonderful subtlety. I love this panel from issue 2, showing Superman in the Fortress of Solitude after his dinner with Lois, standing in front of a mirror, his reflection in a proud, heroic pose, chest out and shoulders back, while he slouches in a typical Clark Kent posture. I've spoken in other recent videos about how I don't think very much of that Superman is too powerful to be a compelling character argument that you encounter every so often from writers who, from where I'm standing, are actually just telling on themselves and admitting they're unable to understand the essence of the character. Morrison and Quitely definitely understand it. In fact, I think All-Star Superman is one of the most resounding refutations of that argument ever published. The series gives us an incredibly, absurdly powerful Superman, one of the most ridiculously overpowered versions of the character ever written. Strong, fast, and vulnerable even to his classic vulnerabilities, with superior intelligence to match his physical abilities. He always wins, he always saves the day, but he is also endlessly compelling and sympathetic. How? Why? Because beneath all of the things that make him superhuman, there's a core that is just as human as any of us. He wants to help and worries he won't be able to do enough. He hopes for a better future. He loves and wants to be loved. What more do you need? All-Star Superman is not the first great Superman story, and it's not the last great Superman story. It's not the definitive interpretation of the character. It's not the standard by which all other versions of the character should be judged. That wouldn't be fair to most of those other versions. What it is the work of a writer and an artist who had a lot to say about Superman and the skill and imagination with which to say it and make the rest of us want to read it. The series is smart, funny, a little demented, bittersweet, brilliant, and beautiful. It's not just one of the best Superman stories ever published, it's an impassioned and forceful argument by example for the existence of Superman, for why he matters, for why he will always matter. In March of 2009, 6 months after the last issue of All-Star Superman was originally published, and 1 month after the release of the second volume of the hardcover collected edition, Grant Morrison was interviewed by Wired. In that interview, casually, just off the top of their head, as though it was the most natural observation in the world that any one of us might have said, Grant Morrison offered the most profound, most beautiful description of Superman that I have ever seen or heard. Somewhere, in our darkest night, we made up the story of a man who will never let us down. With the same stunning austerity with which Morrison and Quitely presented Superman's Kryptonian origin story on page 1, Morrison summed up the allure and the importance of Superman, his character, and his decades of history in one sentence. That notion of Superman being born out of our common need for him is represented in All-Star Superman itself. In the masterful 10th issue, after Superman makes an alternate Earth within a miniature universe to study what humanity would do without him, we're given occasional one-panel updates on history as it unfolds on that alternate Earth. Time moves much more swiftly in the miniature universe, with billions of years of history rushing by over the course of that single day in Superman's life. In our final update from this Earth, we see that its history has reached the modern era, the mid-20th century. From inside an ordinary building in an ordinary city, we hear a voice declaring, "Third time lucky, this is the one." We cut to the inside of the building to see an artist's pencil sketching out something extraordinary. Something that truly will, as he predicts, change everything. How would people get by in a world without Superman? They would have to create him.